What's going on, everybody? It's Dan, Moonshine, the Hillbilly Hellraiser. How you doing? I'm doing all right. Can't really complain. I had a few minutes to kill here, so I figured I would talk about a show that I just watched. It's on Tubi. It's a original animated series called Breaking Bear, and the best way I could describe this series is it's far-fetched, bizarre, and stupid. That would be my description. Uh, the show itself, it's had one season thus far. I guess they drew it, recorded it, did everything they got to do to put an animation together. Put two episodes out one week, and then they put the other six out the week after, so you could pretty much watch the entire thing from front to back. The first season, I watched the first two episodes the first week it came out, and watched the final six on I want to say I did it on a Saturday before work, during my break, and then when I got home, and that was pretty much it. The show itself, it features the voices of Brenden Fraser from Encino Man, The Whale. I can't remember the show that's the DC thing on HBO. The Mummy, he was in the Mummy. I want to the first ones, the ones with I don't know if The Rock was in those or not, but anyhow. Then there's Sarah Michelle Gellar from the TV show Buffy the Vampire Slayer, and Josh Gad, who I know the name, but the best way I could describe him is he's like bargain basement Jonah Hill, who I don't like. So you can imagine what I would think of the bargain basement version of him. And they voice the characters of the three main characters in the show. There's Blair, Jer, and Alistair. I'm presuming their last name will be Bear because they're all bears. They're brothers and a sister, a bear family that come out of hibernation, and they're getting hungry, so they go searching for food, and they happen upon this RV where these two guys, Dwight and Wink, are manufacturing methamphetamine. So as you can imagine, based on the title of the show of the series and my description thus far, this is basically a Breaking Bad parody combined with throughout the season there's a bunch of satire. They even at the beginning of every episode point out that everything is fictitious. This is all satire. None of it is supposed to be rooted in real life, and I can imagine why they do that because they do so much celebrity. I don't even know if worship is the right word, but they feature so many celebrities in it that I'm sure they were worried about a celebrity suing them at some point or another. So they start out they wind up in the RV. The Jer and Alistair looking for food. They end up finding some food. They also find some of the meth that the two guys have just manufactured. So naturally, one of them gets hooked on meth. So now you get the whole cocaine bear thing happening again, but this time it's meth bear. So long story short, uh, Jer, the bigger of the two, he ends up killing. They get into a shootout with Wink and Dwight, and Jer ends up killing one, or I should say that Wink and Dwight end up shooting at the bears. The bears end up Jer ends up eating Wink, and now where his brother has a taste for methamphetamine, he now has a taste for human flesh. So they're both addicted. They both got addictions now. The and the sister is a battling codependency. So there's this whole addiction arc that's just strewn throughout the entire series. They don't kill Dwight. They end up partnering with him because at some point they've just they realize that there's some oil company that's going to buy their forest and frack it, and they don't want that to happen. So they decide that's why they're going to partner up to become meth dealers. And Then on top of that, now they're being chased by the park rangers because they've killed a human, which also endangers them within the forest population because now all of the forest creatures are upset with them because they've broken the unwritten rule of killing a human, which upsets the balance between the humans and the animals. So now they've got the all the forest creatures led by the wolves chasing them or trying to kill them or something or other. And this thing just goes this goes on. This is like the first two episodes. So they need a place to hide, so they wind up in a and I'm kind of bouncing from point to point. I'm just kind of trying to go off the absurdist points of this off the top of my head. They wind up in this cave that's all pimped out and decked out with massage tables and all like sex dungeons and all this crazy nonsense. It's got all sorts of weird paintings all over the wall, including one of Bill Clinton in a dress, and it's owned by a guy named Jeff. I will let your imagination run wild as to who they're referring to. This character doesn't last in the show very long. I'll just leave it at that. And so there's that. And then they do the backstory of Dwight, who turns out to be a music school drama teacher, or he runs the drama department at Robert F. Kennedy Jr. High School. And he ends up selling drugs because the school cut the music department because none of the kids got their polio vaccinations and they all wound up paralyzed. So now they have to spend all the school's resources on building wheelchair ramps. So this is where this show is going. This insane, absurd nonsense. And then it just kind of it goes from there. The bears end up battling with the local white supremacists who run the meth market, and they end up killing one of them, pretty much arming the others to stay off of to take over control of their turf. They end up manufacturing this amazing new narcotic that's honey nut meth because they had honey and nuts and then eventually all these other like bouquet flavors to their brand and all this crazy nonsense. They end up hooking up with a biker gang and then the Dwight character turns on them at some point because he's trying to recreate Straight Outta Compton about NWA in the school play, and he turns into this whole it just goes off the rails as far as that goes, and it gets crazier and crazier and more stupid as time goes on. It gets to they introduce a news reporter who happens to be the sister of the Wink character who gets killed in the first episode. She ends up hooking up with one of the bears. So now you get this human reporter with this bear, and they're doing that. At one point, they're at a club trying to distribute their goods, and they, the one character, Alistair, he winds up hooking up with a panda, but the panda turns out to not be a panda. It's a guy and who's a furry, but he's not just a furry. He's a furry who is also an admirer of a certain Austrian painter from the early 20th century. And they call themselves Fursies, which they also happen to be the white supremacists from the earlier episodes are part of this outfit, and they're all running around with friggin' tiki torches screaming about the bears will not replace us. And it just, I mean, this is the level of just brain rot that is occurring with this show. And at this point I was thinking to myself, like, did this show like get caught in a time capsule and they forgot to air it like 6, 7, 8 years ago? I don't know, 6, 7, but anyhow. Um, yeah, it was just it was so it was just dumb. It's dumb. And then finally it ends where the Bears, and I'm missing a bunch of stuff, but are we really missing any of this? So they come up with another episode where all these canceled celebrities are at a dinner party that's run by the actor Army Hammer, who's I remember him from The Lone Ranger. I don't remember him from anything else, but I know there's this new movie that came out called Citizen Vigilante, and he's in that. It's a Uwe Boll movie, and it got a little bit of notoriety for like 5 minutes, but as is usually the case with an Uwe Boll movie, if you're familiar with him, with The House of the Dead and some of the other movies he's done, they're all very bad. They're just bad movies. He's not a very good director, and he gets lampooned a lot for how bad his movies are. And this one isn't good either, but apparently it's got some sort of migrant invasion angle that it's running through it. So of course that got picked up by a lot of the typical political podcasters and conservative commentators and stuff like that. So that's why I got a little bit of notoriety. But Army Hammer is the main character in that. But then he's the host of a dinner party, and some of his guests are Prince Andrew and Sean Combs, P. Diddy. They got who else is there? Their bartender is this guy Bill, which turns out to be Bill Cosby, who of course is the one that spikes the Bears drinks, and they end up sticking them in a dungeon because this dinner party is for cannibals, and they're gonna kill and eat the bears. There's some gimp sitting in another cell in this dungeon. Eventually, they escape, but not for long because the giant schlong of the law, Pete Davidson, lassos them and restrains them and gets them back to the party. But eventually they break free again. They're all out running around in the forest. Somehow the wolves get involved in some capacity. They're Oh, I just keep remembering more dumb stuff. At one point, the girl bear she gets killed, but she gets revived because the werewolves push her off a cliff, and the friggin' all of a sudden Sasquatch comes out of nowhere and revives her with his trusted steed, Corny the unicorn, who urinates in her mouth with this rainbow unicorn pee, and it's the greatest medicinal elixir on the planet. And it's just, do you see what I put myself through here? Do you see what I'm talking about? And it's just insane. And then eventually, towards the tail end of the final episode, the big cliffhanger is the resuscitated Blair Bear gets abducted by Kanye West in a White Lives Matter shirt, but it turns out to not be Kanye West because plot twist. It's Kanye West is a polar bear, and he's not just a polar bear. He's a polar bear with a shirt that says "White Bears Lives Matter," and he's a polar bearian. So he abducts the Blair Bear character, and he's gonna force her to make her meth for him, and it just kind of goes with the whole Breaking Bad theme. One of the main characters gets offed at the tail end of the episode, setting up one of the students from the school is going to do like the Gus Fring character, and it just I don't know. It was just insane. It was guano crazy. It really was. It was bad. I mean, it just like I said, it just seemed like a fever dream put up by a bunch of crazy liberal people. And I'm not even saying that to like take political sides, but it was just so on the nose and so lowest common denominator. Half of the animation on it was bad. I mean, they would have some of the characters where they'd have big bushy eyebrows and they didn't even fill in the eyebrows in the drawings. They would have some that they looked like these awful pencil sketches, and like somebody who's probably probably some of the people on YouTube could do better drawings for an animation than this. But it was just overall, it was again, I'll use a phrase that I took from one of the last episodes. It was far-fetched, bizarre, and in my opinion, ultimately stupid. It really was a gigantic waste of time, and it was so absurd and such a gigantic waste of time that I felt the need to share this with the world because it was just I couldn't stop talking about it for like a week. For this past week, I haven't been able to stop talking about it because it's such a ridiculous show. And I've seen people do reviews on it on the IMDb, or they've left reviews, and some people are just saying, oh, it's a dark comedy, but really it's just bad. I mean, is really what it comes down to. At first, I mean, I had hopes for it because it kind of, when I saw the stills of it, it kind of looked like Brickleberry, which was a short-lived series on Comedy Central. And that was a pretty good show. It was funny. It had a lot of good bits and lots of good comedy spots in it. But this thing really, it kind of it went off the rails real quick, and it did not ever regain its footing. I'm sure there's an audience for it. I'm sure there's some people that think this is going to be the greatest thing on earth. But I mean, honestly, a lot of the stuff that they talked about, and it was just such lowest common denominator, low hanging fruit kind of stuff that I wasn't impressed with it at all. But anyhow, that's my opinion on the show Breaking Bear, a Tubi original, 8 episodes, a half hour piece. If you've got 4 hours of your life that you want to kill and waste and never get back, then go ahead and watch it and let me know what you think. All right, this has been Dan. This is Moonshine Talking. Hopefully you've enjoyed this. If you found it entertaining, then, do whatever for the channel. Go check out some of the other videos where it's not as depressing and odd. I mean, it's still odd and depressing, just not as depressing and odd as this. Anyhow, all right, everybody. I'll close out and say, stay sick, stay heavy, stay brutal. Always tuck your chin upon impact. Don't forget to breathe. Everybody keep headbanging, iron slanging. Maybe stay away from the brain rot that I watch on TV. I love Tubi. Tubi is like if Netflix is like Blockbuster, Tubi is like your local mom and pop video store around the corner. It has some of the greatest stuff out there, but this is not one of those things. All right, everybody, take it easy. I'll catch you on the next video. Later.